The most brutal financial war of the 21st century isn't being fought on Wall Street. It is silently raging inside colossal server farms, nuclear power plants, and chip fabrication labs spread across 3 continents. We are witnessing a fundamental rewiring of the global economy, where the ultimate currency is raw, unfiltered compute power and the megawatts required to sustain it. The titans winning this war aren't just writing software. They are constructing the physical nervous system of the digital future. Today, we are tearing down this AI hyperscaler arms race, layer by layer, to show you exactly where the smart money is actually flowing. To understand where capital is moving, we must first map the battlefield comprehensively. Every dollar flowing through the AI economy travels through a strict 5-layer hierarchy. It all starts at the physical infrastructure foundation, because as this industry has made brutally clear, AI runs on electricity, not code. We're looking at massive capital flowing into nuclear small modular reactors, renewable grid modernization, and thermal management specialists like Vertiv, Modine, and Nvent who keep the hardware from melting down. Beneath them, data center REITs like Equinix and Digital Realty own the highly coveted real estate these digital fortresses sit on. Move 1 layer deeper into compute and hardware, where the real AI war is chips. While Nvidia dominates merchant silicon alongside AMD and Intel, the big 3 cloud giants are fiercely retaliating with custom silicon: AWS Trainium, Google TPU, and Azure Maia. Below the processors, memory giants Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron supply critical HBM3 storage, while Broadcom and Arista provide the indispensable networking fabric that stitches it all together. Above the hardware sits the cloud and hyperscaler control layer. US big tech, AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, commands the West, while challengers like Oracle, Salesforce, and IBM Cloud fight for specific enterprise niches. Simultaneously, a completely decoupled China parallel stack has emerged, fortified by Alibaba Cloud, Tencent Cloud, and Huawei Cloud. At the applications and ecosystem layer, the golden rule applies. Owning the user equals owning the money. AI-native apps like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Grok, and DeepSeek battle for mindshare. Meanwhile, enterprise software leaders like Salesforce and Snowflake monetize corporate data at scale. The US big tech integrators, Meta, Apple, and Microsoft, leverage massive social and operating system graphs, paralleled by China's application layer featuring ByteDance, Alibaba, and Baidu. Finally, the distribution and end users layer is where the check is actually cashed. Capital flows through integration behemoths like Deloitte, Accenture, TCS, and Infosys straight into heavy enterprise users like Walmart and Goldman Sachs, highly secure government sectors, and ultimately down to over 1 billion active mass users on mobile applications worldwide. What is driving this hyperscaler supercycle? 3 massive engines are powering this compounding cash flow machine through 2030. First, converting infrastructure CapEx into steady annual recurring revenue. Let's look at the actual reported data. By the first quarter of 2026, the combined quarterly cloud revenue of the big 3 officially shattered the $90.2 billion mark. AWS is sitting on $150 billion in annual recurring revenue, backed by $364 billion in remaining performance obligations. Azure follows closely at $139 billion ARR, with $392 billion in RPO, while Google Cloud holds $80 billion in ARR and a staggering $462 billion backlog. Together, the big 3 are converting roughly $600 billion in infrastructure spending into highly predictable, sticky revenue streams. Look at this quarterly trajectory from $48.8 billion in early 2023 up to over $90 billion today. This is geometric expansion. The second engine is the critical pivot from model training to real-time inference. Pre-2026 was defined by massive initial CapEx to train foundational models. We have now officially entered the Agentic AI phase, a hyper-growth market projected to surge from $125.8 billion in 2025 to a massive $536.9 billion by 2034, compounding at a 17.5% CAGR. The third engine is the sovereign cloud and B2G sector, driven by fierce data residency laws like the EU AI Act and the US Cloud Act. Regulatory pressure is unlocking a $572.3 billion sovereign market by 2032. This demands 13.6 gigawatts of entirely new data center capacity between 2025 and 2035, with government and defense contracts capturing 32% of that total. By 2026, total global hyperscale demand is hitting a mind-bending 190 gigawatts. There are 777 global projects underway, with 148 gigawatts still in the planning stages. But here is the timeline gap keeping executives awake at night. You can build an AI data center in 12 to 18 months. Connecting it to the national grid? That takes 5 to 7 years of regulatory red tape. Consequently, over 25% of projects slated for 2025 were stalled purely due to power shortages. To break this bottleneck, the big three went nuclear. Microsoft executed a $16 billion masterstroke, partnering with Constellation to revive the 3 Mile Island reactor for 20 years of carbon-free baseload supply. AWS bypassed the grid entirely, dropping $20 billion to buy a site directly attached to the Susquehanna nuclear plant for 1.9 gigawatts of behind-the-meter power. Google is playing the long game, partnering with Kairos Power to deploy 500 megawatts of small modular reactors by 2035. Because of this, the ultimate success metric has shifted. Wall Street no longer relies purely on power usage effectiveness, or PUE. The new gold standard is PCE, power compute effectiveness. The question is now, how much pure AI compute profit can you squeeze out of a single watt of electricity? Energy is just one choke point. The other is custom silicon. The end game here is to slash CapEx, maximize gross margins, and escape Nvidia's absolute grip. Google's weapon of choice is the TPU v6 Ironwood, paired with Trillium architecture. The specs are terrifying. For 1,614 teraflops of performance, 7.2 terabytes per second of bandwidth, and 192 gigabytes of memory, designed specifically for massive parallel throughput to scale the Gemini model. Microsoft Azure deployed the Maia 100 for AI and Cobalt 100 for CPU workloads. Built on TSMC's 5-nanometer process, the Maia 100 packs 105 billion transistors into a liquid-cooled Psychic architecture, yielding a 40% power reduction while being heavily optimized for sub-8-bit LLM workloads. AWS leverages Trainium 3 and Inferentia, achieving an industry-leading 185 terabytes per second of peak system bandwidth, hyper-optimized for economical deployment for large-scale AI. And then there is Huawei, the sanction breaker. Cut off from advanced Western lithography, they engineered the Ascend 910C using a 7-nanometer equivalent process. By utilizing brilliant dual-die packaging technology, they achieved 800 teraflops of performance, effectively matching 80% of Nvidia's H100. With an output goal of 700,000 units a year and a 90% domestic localization goal, Huawei is proving that China's parallel silicon stack can overcome severe trade restrictions. So, how is this massive CapEx translating into market dominance? In the first quarter of 2026 alone, cloud infrastructure service revenues hit $129 billion, up 35% year over year. AWS maintains the lead at 28%. Microsoft Azure sits at 21%, while Google Cloud captures 14%. Combined, 63% of the global market is monopolized by 3 American corporations. Farther down, Alibaba holds 4%, Oracle captures 3%, while Salesforce, Huawei Cloud, and IBM Cloud each hold roughly 2%. But the real alpha is in the momentum over the last 16 quarters. Since Q1 2022, AWS has experienced a slow but steady relative market share erosion, dropping from 33% down to 28%. Azure relentlessly climbed from 16% to 21%. But the most explosive mover is Google Cloud, surging from a 10% baseline in 2022 to capture 14% of the market in Q1 2026, fueled by an astonishing 63% YoY revenue growth that pushed their quarterly cloud revenue to $20 billion. This leads us to a fractured global battlefield, ruled by 5 distinct operating models. AWS, the infrastructure titan, defends its 28% market share with an unparalleled global footprint of 38 regions and 120 availability zones, though it routes a massive 41.5% of its traffic through a single cluster in US East 1. Backed by off-grid power and Trainium 3 silicon, AWS is also heavily deploying independent local infrastructure via the AWS European Sovereign Cloud. Microsoft Azure acts as the AI integrator. With its 21% market share and $139 billion ARR, Azure weaponizes its OpenAI exclusivity to force M365 Copilot migrations across enterprise networks. They support this with liquid-cooled pods and Project Blue to secure EU private cloud compliance. Google Cloud is the efficiency engine, holding a massive $462 billion backlog and 14% market share. It runs the Gemini stack and services over 3 billion workspace users. It is the undisputed king of efficiency with a 1.09 PUE and secures European compliance through S3NS, a joint venture with Thales to meet France's SEC number cloud standards. Oracle plays the AI foundry, capturing roughly 3% market share, but sitting on over $500 billion in RPO. Oracle is deploying a massive $50 billion in GPU CapEx to build custom megaclusters tailored for OpenAI and Cohere, specifically targeting national security and U.S. government networks. Meanwhile, the China stack operates a fiercely decoupled ecosystem. Alibaba holds absolute dominance with a 22.5% APAC market share in its Balian MaaS platform. Tencent controls 16% of the China share, weaving Hunyuan AI directly into WeChat. DeepSeek initiates ruthless price wars, while Huawei's 7nm Ascend 910C anchors the absolute state-owned enterprise grip behind the ultimate firewall. At the end of the day, how does this all translate to profitability? Look closely at the AI value chain funnel. The ultimate rule of the digital economy is this: distribution equals profit. At layer 1, the foundational models are engaged in a brutal high-margin API battle. On the left, closed-source titans like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google charge premium rates for complex reasoning services. But on the right, open-source disruptors like Meta's Llama, Alibaba's Qwen, and DeepSeek are violently commoditizing this foundation layer. DeepSeek, for example, has driven inference costs down to a mere 14 cents per 1 million tokens. The raw intelligence layer is fast becoming a commodity. So where does the wealth actually accumulate? It accelerates at layer 2, the packaging. This is where the productivity duopoly of Microsoft 365 Copilot and Google Workspace forces enterprise upgrade cycles across over 3 billion locked-in users. It is also the birthplace of autonomous agents. These agents execute multi-step logic loops without human prompting, triggering an explosion of geometric token consumption that multiplies cloud revenue instantly. Meanwhile, the implementation bridge, global consultants like Deloitte and Accenture, drags traditional, heavy industries into the AI era. But layer 3 is the ultimate gatekeeper. The attention economy, controlled by Apple, Meta, ByteDance, TikTok, and Tencent, owns the end user. Apple Intelligence controls the on-device ecosystem for over 1 billion affluent users. Social media giants optimize advertising graphs and embed AI directly into daily messaging and payments. On the enterprise side, sovereign players like S3NS and heavy enterprises like Walmart lock in national data borders and massive CapEx. The bottom line is undeniable. Owning the distribution channel and the user experience allows you to control the total compute margins of the entire industry. When we look at the top 8 AI hyperscalers for 2026, we are mapping the power grid of the new digital economy. First, the cloud sovereigns: Microsoft, Amazon, and Alphabet. Microsoft locks down enterprise software, Amazon dictates the grid with nuclear power, and Alphabet commands the consumer web. Wall Street assigns them premium valuations because they have mastered converting massive CapEx into highly predictable, recurring revenue. Next, the margin multipliers: Oracle and Meta. Oracle acts as the ultimate AI foundry securing megaclusters, while Meta weaponizes open-source AI to explode its advertising margins. Despite anxieties over Oracle's debt and Meta's hardware spend, the market rewards both for boasting the most aggressive earnings growth forecasts in the sector. Finally, the decoupled empire: Alibaba, Tencent, and Huawei. This parallel China stack operates as a state-backed monopoly across e-commerce, super apps, and custom silicon. While severe geopolitical headwinds have compressed their valuations to historic discounts, they still maintain an absolute stranglehold on the Chinese digital economy. In short, the real wealth will flow to those who control the nuclear compute power and the ultimate ecosystem lock-in. Please note, this video is strictly for educational purposes and does not constitute financial advice. Thanks for watching. If this deep dive gave you a sharper edge, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. See you in the next one.